on the screen, and don't know why I imagined there'd be people I don't know, when actually I know all of you quite well, and it's just so warm and heartening to see you all. And one of the things I really like to stress in what I'm about to say is one of the shining lights of the Dharma for me is our interconnectedness. And when I see people on the screen, even though I think it was Vasantra in one of his retreats recently said, there's these borders around each of us. But there's something for me very intimate in this 2D, and I'm really grateful for you attending. What I want to do is talk about, well, my life in the order, which probably, well, it is about 3/4 of it has been in lockdown, which has given me other sorts of opportunities. I want to talk about that, but also to go back a bit, because I've really enjoyed the other talks that I've heard about how people have come to this point. And in some ways, I think it's a bit seamless, and it's in a sense for me, an evolving sense. And I thought I would do it by having a series of snapshots. To show how I so enjoyed your PowerPoint slides that I sort of tried to work out for myself how to show just a couple of photos. I'm a visual person, and actually many of us are. And so I just thought I'd show a few photos as well. But the technology, and Ridge Mahi showed me this the other night, is going to be a bit clunky. So forgive that, because I think the photographs are great. So I want to share a series of stories, or if you like, views or myths about my time so far in the order. Bear with me a second. So I'm just going to stop sharing that and start again. Anyway, I'm going to just let my perfectionism sort of go for a second and not try to control everything. And the sense of the sort of blue sky on the 29th of September, it was my public ordination in Golden Bay in New Zealand. And I had the privilege to be ordained with 6 other women, and we spent, I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks. It sounds a bit unusual not to know the exact time, but there was something about the ordination retreat that all that sense of time and space actually evaporated. And this is a photograph on the beach in Golden Bay, and these are the sorts of vistas that we often saw. At the public ordination retreat, myself and as those who have gone before me, we took the 4 lines of acceptance when we were going to be ordained. And these are the particular lines of acceptance, similar in other traditions, but in the Triratna tradition. With loyalty to my teachers, I accept this ordination. In harmony with my friends and brethren, I accept this ordination. For the attainment of enlightenment, I accept this ordination. For the benefit of all beings, I accept this ordination. So powerful to me, these vows of acceptance. And these vows of acceptance have really become the framework for my life. About a week earlier to the 29th, around about that time, I was privately ordained, and at that private ordination, recognized and witnessed that the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha were central to my being, at the heart of myself. The heart where that sense of freedom sits for all of us, but the heart for me, and I'm sure for many others, where that sense of constriction can also sit. I was given my name by my private preceptor, Sraddhanaya, guide to faith. And when she talked about that name, she also talked about guide to faith, but also acknowledging my work with people who weren't necessarily Buddhists, a guide to what's important to people, because she knew for me that it was so important for me to practice my Dharma life within my work life and have that integrated into my practice. But also the message was guide to faith, so I could be my guide to my own faith, to the Dharma or to the truth, to the Buddha, the exemplar of faith, and to the Arya Sangha. And for me, it's an ongoing memory for this lifetime and the next to keep that faith alive. Because for me, I'm sure like many others, that faith can often drop out. And it's a good reminder what to call to over and over again. So you continue, or I continue to have a guide. So I want to go back a bit, back about 20 years. And I just want to show this image, and I'm really hoping it comes up a bit better than the last time, but yeah, we'll soon see. Yes, it has. Oops. There's only about 4 images, and I'll get better at this. Can you see the image of the woman and the child? This is a silhouetted image that a photography student worked with me about 20 years ago when I was at the coordinator of the Ecumenical Migration Center, which was to become part of the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence. In 2000, this photograph was shot. The people are in silhouette, in sepia, because they sit in the shadow of Australia's public policy. They're asylum seekers. But before I go on, closer to my heart in many ways, although I didn't recognize that at the time, in being so close to my heart, in 2000, around this time, my father had a stroke and became a quadriplegic for about a year. And my mother had a serious brain injury and had to have a life-threatening operation and needed ongoing care. At this time, at the Ecumenical Migration Center, we had a phone call from Sheikh Femi, the head of the Council of Imams, and he said, there's been a federal court case and 500 people are going to be released into Melbourne and around the country, and they're coming on buses. We don't know how long they've been in immigration detention in remote parts of Australia, but they'll be released. The people who will be released that we started to meet off the buses in different states were women who had got on the leaky boats by themselves, who, as one woman had said, to take the hand of the smuggler, there is no choice, there is no freedom. It is to take the hand of death. For many of these children, and this child was born in immigration detention and had never known any freedom. I was challenged by this, but I had grown up in a household of crisis management, and me and my siblings had often come together like a pact in some ways to manage family crisis. And so I took that same energy to this. And it was a real privilege to get to know many of these people. So it went on for about a year. And then in 2001, early in the morning one day in Collingwood, where the Ecumenical Migration Centre was, there was a green strip of lawn in the middle of Victoria Parade. And as I was walking to work, and it was early, about 6:30 in the morning, because it was my job to make the cups of tea before everybody came, because nobody was given any benefits, any Medicare card, any accommodation, and lots of people slept in that building. When I came, as I was walking along the street, I could hear in the wind almost crying, wailing, and I looked to the green nature strip. And there were these men crouched down in white robes, crying. What had happened, because of Australia's immigration policy, people weren't able to sponsor their families to come. And so women and children were caught in Indonesia and Malaysia. And they were a real risk. People didn't know what to do. And these men didn't know what to do who lived in Preston. And so they got on a boat and they went back to Malaysia and Indonesia, as many people do with courage for their loved ones, and brought them back on the boat. But unfortunately, the boat off the coast of Java capsized, and 123 people, these people that were relatives of these people on this nature strip, had drowned. It was something that I found so truly shocking to my sense of existence. I didn't know what to say. It was the first time that I felt absolute shame and didn't know what to do. I felt my heart breaking open, but I continued in crisis mode, which I knew so well, and encouraged others to do that with me, which at least for a time was helpful. What I didn't appreciate, because I didn't have the Dharma in my life, I'd actually moved into a state of horrified anxiety. The sense of tension that only I and many others feel in this top of your body, this sense of constriction in my core. So what I did was, each night after work, we'd finish work at about 10 o'clock, and they were the days that I'd eat 3 potato cakes every afternoon. So delicious, all that salt and fat. And at night I'd go dancing. And this friend of mine brought me an alarm clock to wear around my wrist. I didn't drink any alcohol, but I would go dancing to this sleazy club in Essendon, dancing by myself in a twirling skirt to the nightclubs, and dance all night and never get a sense of feeling tired. And my watch would ring at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I would go home, not really stopping for a glass of water and not realizing I was on this automatic pilot. Then this friend of mine, Libby, said to me one day, "You're going to die. Actually, it's not working very well for you. You've become really demanding, single-focused. You're going to break. Come to the Melbourne Buddhist Centre with me." And I was what I call Feminist 101 and an atheist. And I thought, oh, yeah. But I really liked Libby. And I thought one Monday night, it was a Monday, I think, or a Thursday, I'll come along. And like many people, when I came, the sort of lovely and dear Dipankara was at the door with his beautiful smile of connection. And he looked at me. I remember him greeting me with this smile. And he said, "I'll just perhaps stand in the small shrine room," or the large shrine room at the time. And I remember seeing what I know now to be the Vajras on the wall and Shakyamuni on the shrine, and having this, oh, I've come home. This sense of knowing, this sense of belonging. And so I studied the Dharma and joined into lots of meditation. In 2004, I became a Mitra. And I always had this sort of strong sort of sense of the transcendental. And quite early on, I looked out for different rupas. And this is the first rupa that I still, you might be able to see it behind me, can you? It's I'll just put it up. So it's a rupa of Amitabha. Somebody pointed out to me quite recently that the head was too big for the body, but that's really what I like about it. It's not quite the right form. And here on the stone is the Khri, which is in Amitabha's heart, the seed syllable. And my dear private preceptor Megha painted this for me on my ordination retreat. Amitabha is the color of red. This red string around his body is the string that was given to me in my Kalyana Mitra ceremony with my Kayams, Vidyatara and Shanti Devi, who have been so significant in my spiritual journey. I got the rupa at a car boot sale. I didn't know anything about Amitabha, but like many of us, he came to me, the head of the Lotus family. I was soon to learn, or in my experience, that if you take the head of the Lotus family, you're able to have the whole of the family with you, which I have felt very comforting over a long period of time. One of the other things or snapshots that was really significant to me, I studied Sangharakshita's book, Know Your Mind, and I used to walk up and down, and near my work, I was working in a different place by then, and I would listen to tapes on Know Your Mind of Sangharakshita talking about his very clear description of the nature of mind, how it functions. It's the guide for the people who are not so familiar to the Amitabha classification of the positive and mental states and how you work with them. Sounds all very intellectual, but I remember walking down Burke Street in the city on the way to a meeting and listening to him talk about it and feeling that sense of, wow, this is something, this is a pathway, a framework or a map that I can start to know my mind. Because until then, I was very, very tentative of my mind, because at times I had learned to be terrorized by my own mind and would always think how wild it was. Didn't even appreciate that there was ways to understand it. So to say something about prior to ordination and post-ordination, I can't say, people on this screen, my Mitra sisters, my Dharma brothers, how generous people have been to me. Like my name, they too have so often been my guide to faith. We take in the order, the symbol of the order, which is Avocatesra. And there's a beautiful image of Avocatesra that I really love that I'll show to you. This is an image of the 1,000-armed Avocatesra. I love the story of Avocatesra. Avocatesra of the Lotus family, the family of Amitabha. In the beginning of his bodhisattva career, he took a great vow. Should he ever become disheartened in saving sentient beings, may his body shatter into 1,000 pieces. And due to this vow, he became the symbol of overwhelming compassion and determination. But despite his great effort and will, many countless beings were suffering, and he wasn't able to save them all. He became so disheartened that despite his vow, he couldn't fulfill it, and his head shattered into 11 pieces. But seeing his great difficulty, Amitabha, through his own compassion and love, gave him 11 heads so that he could hear the cries and the needs of the sentient beings of the world who were still suffering. He just didn't give up, but his 2 hands were so limited to provide aid to those who needed. Once again, Amitabha came to his aid. With a miraculous power, he gave Avocatesra a new form, where he was 1,000 hands of compassion, and the eyes of the wisdom, and you can almost see them, sit in the different hands. And in these different hands, there were different tools. And what I've learned in this journey is that in our order and in all Buddhist traditions, none of these hands cross over each other. They all sit with their individual eyes. They all have their ways of knowing in the world. And together they move together. For me, it's such a beautiful image for our order. I want to just share a couple of experiences and really share the merit of 2 people who've been really significant in my life. In 2007, I decided to go on my first 2-week meditation retreat. And at the time, I had moved from human rights work as such, and I had moved into something sort of lighter, into palliative care, into cancer. which you have to appreciate if you're brought up sort of in crisis management. It's sort of a natural sort of direction. And I thought I'd have a bit of a break from human rights work, but surprise, 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 this same sort of fear of constriction came back again. And I decided to go on this meditation retreat for 2 weeks. And Vidya Tara, she was in Vidya Tara then, really encouraged me to go. So I went to Sydney and I was met by Chittapapa, and many people will know her. And she said to me when she greeted me, I produced my puja book to her, my blue book, and I said to her, don't worry if you highlight parts of it, me not worrying about devotional texts, being quite pragmatic. Would you mind just highlighting just 1 or 2 lines in it that can really help me with my sense of fearlessness and really drive me on, because I'd really like to get back to my work in just 1 or 2 lines, not too many, because I'd like to learn them off by heart. And at the end of the 2 weeks, can you give me back the book? Right. So then I was part of the retreat, and she's so generous. And I keep this in my puja book. It's so beautiful, these 4 pages from her that she wrote to me. I won't read them all, but she always starts the same beautiful way. And as you know, I was Ainsley. Dear Ainsley, how beautiful to meet you. Thank you for being on this retreat. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to find 1 or 2 lines, but these are my initial feelings and thoughts for you on fearlessness. And so skillfully she goes through and carefully things that I can accept about ego, about the ordinary life, about not being too willful, about fearlessness, about the different taras, touches on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and finally says to me, so make the most of this precious human life. May all blessings be yours on your spiritual path. With love and deep metta, Chittapapa. So generous. There was about 30 women on this retreat that she took the time to do it. And on another occasion, I decided to go on my first solitary. As somebody who was terrified of her mind, solitary was not something I was looking forward to. So I went to Naga Naga. No idea about the bush. No idea whatsoever. I can remember in the middle of the night walking across all this bush, to this portable toilet. You know, it felt like miles away in the pitch black with this head torch. And it took about 3 or 4 days to think, why am I doing this? There's actually nobody around. I could just go outside this half-broken caravan and piss in the bush, and it actually wouldn't matter. So that was the sense of the inner city to the country, I suppose. And so patient Mega was. And she said to me as I walked down the hill, you know, Ainsley, there's no shame in coming up the hill if you're scared. And after a couple of days, I was really scared. Not so much of the bush, but of my mind. And I decided also there was this beep in the caravan, beep, 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 beep. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to break something. And I was very nervous that I was going to break something. And so I decided that I'd write her a note and push it under the door. And the note goes to her, hi, Mega, I thought I should drop this off in the daylight as I was not so sure whether it needed attention in the daylight. Last night when I had the lights on, there was this beep, 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 like the sound of when a battery is going in a smoke alarm. This sound went on for hours. I'm not sure. And I go on and on. And then I write, and this is in 2008, whilst I'm writing, I might as well ask you about a different meditation matter that I seem to be a bit scared about my mind. It feels quite concentrated. I'm not sure what to do. Well, in summary, I am well, and it has nothing to do about the beep. Perhaps you could write back a little bit about telling me about my mind and what I should do about it. But if you're too busy, don't worry, I'll see you next week, which is sort of how I am, really. Anyway, beautiful note back with this picture of Mega pushed under my caravan in the middle of the night, so I didn't see her because I was on solitary. Hi, Ainsley. Don't worry, dear friend. The beeping means that the solar battery is getting quite low. Perhaps it would help to turn off the lights. You might find that in the night in the country, you might get enough light by the moon. It had never occurred to me. And it goes on for 5 or 6 or 7 points, giving me assistance with my mind, talking about how details are endless, but just to relax, drop the inquiries, and that you'll see me on Saturday at 3. What an inspiration that people can be so patient year after year after year. I find it a real inspiration to my own practice. And if I can be half or a quarter or a tenth as kind and as patient as they are, I would really appreciate it. In 2012, I sat opposite Bante. Vidyatara had helped me and encouraged me to go and visit him. I was back into human rights work by then. Again, I had been terrified by my mind. My father had not long died, and my mother was very ill. And I decided to share with Bante my fear. I decided to share with him, not because I was overly courageous, but because I was desperate. And when I went to see him, he was this elderly man in this chair. All I could feel was the sense that he was in this open vista of metta. And I sat down opposite him, and after a few pleasantries, I said to him, he was quiet, and I said, I don't know what to do. And for some reason, I said to him, would you mind if I looked into your eyes? Because I don't know unless I have your inspiration, and I have read lots of your texts, that I can help myself. And he said in a very sort of matter-of-fact way, very well. And he leant forward, and I leant forward, and he held my hands. And I remember so clearly being so met by him, looking in his eyes. It was like looking to the lineage. A couple of weeks later, I was in Ireland. I was driving along this country road, and there was this tractor coming towards me. It was dark. I became really scared and constricted and worried. What was I going to do? And in front of me came those eyes on the windscreen, his eyes. It was like a calling from the lineage. And at that point, I knew in my being to live on, Sraddhanaya or Ainsley, and don't take this mind into the next lifetime. And if you can be of benefit to other people because you know better your own mind, do this in this lifetime. Sraddhanaya, Guide to Faith, my order life. I spent quite a bit of time, I think my name will unfold for lifetimes. She who guides to faith. Faith is one of the spiritual qualities to help us to wake up. As the Pali Canon says, the Buddha asks his disciples, what are the qualities of the faculties? What are the qualities of particularly of faith? Shraddha is faith in the awakening of the Buddha mind, of the Buddha seed, the essence in all of us. But faith also needs to be balanced by wisdom. Initially, I had no idea who Sraddhanaya was when I was ordained last year. And bit by bit, I also didn't have any sense of who Ainsley was anymore. It seemed like she was somebody completely else, and I had no sense of it. But over time, I realized not to just cut out Ainsley, and Ainsley can be more integrated into Sraddhanaya, and they can come together. But there is an opportunity to be Sraddhanaya. There's an opportunity to travel along with all of you, with my Dharma brothers and sisters, a chance to do things differently. A sense of what can I do from now? I took Amitabha as my visualization practice, to really feel that sense of sitting within the earth, to be grounded and not moving into horrified anxiety. On my ordination retreat, I learned for the first time what it really was to meditate in a grounded way. It sounds funny, but it came from a different sense of knowing. What continues to be the near enemy for me in my practice and what I work on is that sense that I realized, and my dear friend Priyada suggested it to me, that in some ways I still go to the transcendental, to Amitabha and to the rest, to manage crisis, except to manage it in the transcendental. It's an interesting thing because it's a sense that I really still at times don't appreciate conditionality. I believe that sense that in that deluded way, that if you just understood what I do, you'd agree with me. That sounds very funny, but when it's about trying to help people who are survivors of torture and trauma who I work with get a visa, it comes from that sense of desperation. It also comes from that sense of delusion, of not appreciating different things that happen. As a new order member, I think about what can I contribute? How can I best serve the Dharma? Some of it's the same as I've always served, like many of you here. Attend the center, help at the center. I love to do that. Building friendships, sense of connections, having different structures that support me, my chapter life with other order members, and the joy of being involved in Mitra study. And I can't say enough about how Charanacha has supported me, and the different women who are on the screen too have supported me in doing this, and how we've really traveled along together. One of the things that I have learned, and how I take my practice into my work, which I want to finish by talking a bit more about. There's a sense now I've moved from policy and advocacy. I do direct counselling work with survivors of torture at Foundation House. It's such a privilege to do this work. But I work with people around them understanding their minds. I don't necessarily use the Buddhist language unless I'm working with, I have a couple of Tibetan clients, I do then. But interestingly, many of the clients that I work with, they've been persecuted by Buddhists. So I work with many Tamils. I find that difficult. And some of them every now and again will ask, "You Buddhist? You Buddhist?" And I tell them that I am. One of the things that I have found very significant in working with them is this guide to faith of what is important to them. This sense of providing an opportunity of mindfulness that connects to something bigger in them, something that their faith goes to. I can remember one man in the corridor when he had learnt that his family had been kidnapped. I was in the corridor with him, a man in his 40s, an asylum seeker who's been waiting for 12 years for his case to be processed. We're in the corridor and he looked at me and he said, in broken English, "My God has gone." And I thought, oh no, this was his main protective factor. And we looked into each other's eyes and he said, "He's gone to the clouds." And for some reason I said, "Can you see any part of him?" in a really literal way. And he said, "Yes, I can see his feet and I'll grab hold of them and I'll be okay." On another occasion, quite recently, I was speaking to a Hindu man and his case was very, very desperate. Lots of intrusive memories. He'd been put in prison for 6 years in India, full of shame because his children would come and visit him. And he said to me, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't keep going on." And I wear this, you might see it, this porcelain heart, and I wear it to work. It reminds me of the fragility of the heart, the fragility but the strength of the courage of the heart of Amitabha. And I can remember holding the heart, and for some reason I said to him, "When I am like this in my mind, I surrender myself completely and fall to the ground." And he went, "Shiva." And that same inspiration came to him as a Hindu. I don't understand how these different things happen, but I do understand that there's lots of conditionality that bring these things together. And it's a real opportunity to work with these people. What I know is to deeply know that what I have in common with all beings is joy and the love of the heart's awakening. This is the refuge of the light of the Amitabha sky that fades into the bigger blue, blue sky. Thank you.